As retired and active police officers, we all know that you can buy gear from a lot of different places, especially online. But I want to remind you of the importance of supporting companies that support law enforcement. I don't know of any company that fits that bill more than Goals. At Goals.com, their motto is proud to serve those who serve, which they do every single day. And they walk the talk by supporting dozens of focused organizations like Gold Shields. So when you're looking for gear, support our premier sponsor and go to goals.com. And for our loyal listeners to this show, use the code GOLD15 for 15% off your next purchase until October 31st. Go to goals.com today.
Welcome to Gold Shields. Join NYPD veterans Tom Smith and Dan Murphy. With over 50 years of combined experience chasing drug lords, dismantling cartels, and hunting terrorists. Now they pull back the curtain, sharing raw, unfiltered stories from the front lines and the heroes who stood beside them. No topics off limits. This is real. This is true crime. This is Gold Shields.
Hey, welcome back to Gold Shields. This is Dan Murphy along with my partner in crime, Tom Smith. How are you today, my brother?
It's good, man. You know, I hate this. I love this time of year, but I hate this time of year because the year is going to be gone in like a blink, you know, but I think we had a good year. So we got a lot to look back on and say thanks for sure.
We've had some amazing guests, and today is keeping that streak alive, without a doubt. We're very lucky to have our guest today, who's somebody who's incredibly accomplished, and I can't wait to hear about the case we're going to talk about. But Tom, first, do you want to give any shout-outs to some of our friends? We have some amazing sponsors. We love them, and they keep the lights on here.
Yeah, you know, our premier Goals. We're blessed to have them in our corner supporting us. Go to goals.com, use our promo code GOLD15, get 15% off your products, your purchases. They gave that to us to give to you to make sure, you know, you go on their website, check them out. So they're always in our corner, in the corner of law enforcement. They're awesome. And we're just so proud to have them on our show and part of our little world here. And as always, make sure you check us out at TheGoldShieldShow.com and YouTube.com/@GoldShields. Keep hitting that subscribe button, that bell, all that good stuff, and keep following us because it kind of helps a little bit.
A little bit, yeah, just a little bit, yeah. So our guest today is probably a fairly humble guy, but he shouldn't be for all the things he's accomplished. And Tom, tell us about him because you know more about him than me. But everything I've read about him is fascinating.
You know what? I just said it before. The best part of this show is having people like Mark Sewell on. You know, just people who took their job to the best level you could do it in every aspect. You know, no days off. You know, every case was the most top level case, priority case, 100%, 100 miles an hour. Just do it, you know, and when we get people like this on the show, it's so great because there's stuff we know about them and then there's stuff we don't know about them till we start talking to them. And that's what we're going to get from Mark today, from a Marine to a great FBI career, running down motorcycle gangs and the big case we're going to talk about, the Gambino crime family, an author of a great book we're going to get into also. But without any further ado, Mark Sewell, it is a pleasure to have you on Gold Shields, buddy. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thank you. I've been looking forward to it. So thank you both, Dan and Tom. I'm a fan of your show. We were talking about it in warm-ups. I've seen quite a few of your episodes. And so I know you've had some agents on, so thank you for that as well. But yeah, I'm just as excited as you are.
Well, thank you for that. And I think our audience can tell you have a thick Brooklyn accent. So which borough did you grow up in?
Yeah.
Where did you grow up?
So I told Tom when warm-ups, I said I was voted most in my high school. I was not the guy that was voted most likely to grow up and work a mob case, right? Yeah. I grew up in Texas, so I'm from the Houston area. The oil refineries is where my father worked and all my friends' fathers worked. And I graduated from high school, got married, joined the Marines, and left. And I'm back in Texas after 40 years of being on the road. We just moved back last year. We didn't move back to Houston, but we're in the Southeast Texas area. And that accent you hear is from the great state, the Republic of Texas.
Yeah. The free state. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's a lot like Brooklyn and Long Island and the Bronx, but
eerily similar to that. Eerily.
Mark, 1997 was a great time, for you getting out of the Marines, getting in the FBI. Just tell us about that whole process, with deciding you're in the Marines and you kind of have, once you're going to get out, you could kind of pick a lot of places you want to go, with law enforcement or anything like that, state, local level, and you choose to go to the FBI. What was that decision like?
It was a tough one. I had a great career in the Marine Corps. I started enlisted, and the Marine Corps picked me to go back to college and get a degree. And I went to the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina, great military academy there. I was lucky enough to get my diploma from Ronald Reagan, walked across stage, shook hands with the Gipper. Yeah, right. Graduated with a lot of other great Marines and had a great career going. My last tour, I was an aide for a 2-star general. And the reason I say that is, one, that's a great job in itself, especially if you have a good general. You get to see the world. You get to see the way the big Marine Corps works. But if you do that job well, it's like being, maybe the aide for the NYPD commissioner. You get set up to go to a pretty good job after that, as long as you don't screw it up. Well, the general made it very clear to me, hey, it's time for you to rotate out. Where would you like to go next? And he was a little surprised when I said, hey, General, sir, I think I'm going to get out. And the Bureau has hired me. I applied to only one agency, to answer your question, and that was the FBI. Had they not hired me, I would have stayed in the Marines. Doing the training in Quantico that Marine officers do, you get exposed to the FBI because our academies are co-located together. A lot of the training is you pass each other on the road and so on. And that influence just always stuck with me. I've been a fan of law enforcement and decided that's just the way I would go if I was going to leave the Marines. So I had 45 days of transition between leaving the Marines. I was in Hawaii, another terrible tour that the Marine Corps made me do.
Damn.
Yeah. Texas boy in Hawaii working for a general. And then I come to Quantico in the summer of 97, graduate from Quantico in October, and I get orders to Atlanta, Georgia, which was good for me. I wanted to be in the Southeast. That way the accent doesn't stick out. And I got Atlanta as one of my choices. And so I was happy about that. And then when I get down to Atlanta, I get stuck on, that's not the right word. I get assigned to a brand new squad in Atlanta, the Organized Crime Squad.
Brand new. Wow.
Brand new.
Yeah, it's brand. Yeah. Well, Atlanta had never had an organized crime squad. And it really was new. Now, we had worked a lot of these violations as they would come up, but they were kind of the oddity violations. And we didn't have a squad dedicated to, like you do for bank robberies or drugs or white collar crime. And we did something in Atlanta. The bosses did what they call surveys, where they would go out to the locals, PDs, SOs, and say, hey, what do you need help with that you're not able to tackle because of whatever reason? And the prevalent feedback was organized crime is moving into Atlanta, and we don't know who these people are because we don't have contacts in New York or Vegas or Miami, and we really don't have the judicial tools to prosecute them. They're not violating our laws. They're violating your federal laws, more or less, and so on. And so Atlanta responded to that and created an organized crime squad where we started targeting Russians, Asians, and the LCN. And I fell in on the LCN side.
Fascinating. LCN meaning La Cosa Nostra, this thing of ours, as the Italians, what they call the mafia themselves. So it's funny. Well, it's interesting to me. The criminal section of the FBI, most of the agents that are there are on teams like yours. However, there are a great many who handle individual cases of criminality that come up, whether they be kidnapping or bank robberies or something like that. Organized crime is a very different approach. to policing, organized crime investigations, because you're looking at an organization in its entirety, looking to dismantle the organization, top down, bottom up, whatever it takes, depending upon who your snitches are. And those cases can be fascinating. Tell us a little bit about what you remember when you first got there, about what the agents, did anybody really in your team have experience doing these cases before?
Yeah, good question. Well, when they created that squad, they went around the office, which Atlanta had over 200 agents in it in the headquarters city, and pulled the agents that had experience, one, but also had wise guy experience. So we had 2 agents that were born and raised in New York and had worked New York OC. The older of the 2, John Simmons, had worked Donnie Brasco, for example. He was part of the 3-man team that picked up Lefty Ruggiero when Lefty was walking down the sidewalk to be called in. You know, in the movie, they make it look like maybe he gets whacked at the end. He would have got whacked, but John and 2 others picked him up because they were up on a wire and they heard him get called in. And so they went and picked him up. So that experience is in Atlanta with me. And then John Accavelli is there also. And John, who was 10 years younger than the other John, had just come from New York on the C-16 squad working the Gambinos and was part of the John Gotti Sr. case and that trial and the like. So now those guys are on the LCN side, and what a wealth of experience, right? We couldn't have been any more lucky. Then you get new guys like me who thinks, yeah, I think I saw John Gotti's picture in a newspaper one time, and the name rings a bell. So I was able to learn from them. You talk about the other types of cases. You're right. I learned real quickly that kidnappings can be over in a day or a couple of days or a month or a week. But wise guy cases, long-term investigations, you're in it for years. And that's what and they told me that, you know, this is a marathon, not a sprint. And that's what it turned out to be, for sure.
Yeah, and Dan knows about the kidnapping part. He worked them for a long time, and we all worked long-term cases that they go on for a long time, but you feel like it's a week that you did it because it's just so intense and so much to do in those cases. So, hey, let's get banging into this big case, Gambino strip club, Gold Strip, all that. The origins of it. Was it a tip? Was it a focus? Was it a target? How did this just big time case, and when I say big time case, this was it. How did that start with you guys?
Yeah, good questions. The New York OC squad, the Gambino squad, actually picked up the phone and called Atlanta, and they called John Simmons, and they said, "Hey, just so you know, one of our, if not the top, one of the top associates that the Gambinos have just bought a strip club in Atlanta, and we just wanted you to be aware of it so you could start working it, pay attention, see what's going on." We knew that when that phone call came in, they told us at the time that he was in John Gotti Jr.'s crew, which says a lot, right? So Junior's not bringing anybody in that's not a big earner. And so that's how we got the case. But I think it's important for your audience to know what made Atlanta unique when it comes to strip clubs. Or Georgia, but Atlanta at the time was one of only 3 states that had full nudity and full alcohol in their clubs. You know, you go to California, you go to Vegas, and the girls are wearing pasty. You go to Scores, and the girls are wearing pasties. Right? It's not both. And so Georgia has this very unique, or Atlanta had this very unique relationship that it could promote both vices. Well, that was attractive to the tourism market, for one, the 1996 Olympics, which is going to be 80% male audience, is rolling into town. What are they going to do in their off time? So you get this creation of all of these strip clubs. These licenses are popping up. Billboards are going up. Marquees are going up. And the city of Atlanta is supporting this. They're saying, come on, bring it on. They're making their entry fees very cheap and inexpensive. They actually had, and the last time I looked 2 years ago, they had, if you went to the official City of Atlanta Visitors Bureau website, there was a link for the Cheetah Strip Club on the government website.
Oh my God.
Okay.
Wow.
Now, that's how in bed the city of Atlanta is with the adult business, because it's a moneymaker. Hotels, restaurants, alcohol. So instead of charging these clubs these exorbitant licensing fees, they made it cheap because they're going to make their money back on all these other taxes that these clubs are going to create. And so people saw this happening and wanted to get in on this. And Steve Kaplan, our bad guy from the Gambinos, had been in the nightclub business in your city historically. And he went down at the same time to Boca and Miami and got in the nightclub business there. And Junior would go down and visit him. And then his new boss would go down and visit him. And then he gets this opportunity in 94, seeing the handwriting on the wall that the Olympics are coming, to buy a club in Atlanta. And he does so. So he sells his clubs in South Florida. He sells his nightclubs in New York, but he keeps his Penn Station businesses. And now he's down to one club. And by the time we took it from him, it was the number one grossing strip club in America.
Wow. So that was the Gold Club, right?
That's right. The Gold Club. There's that, those names exist in other clubs in other cities because it's not something you can copyright or trademark or something, but the Gold Club of Atlanta. That's right.
Okay, so this is Gambino's operating the Gold Club. Tell us about the Gold Club. What kind of numbers? How many people? How many employees? How much money did they make? How big was this place?
Square footage, I don't know the exact number. I wish I could go back and find it. I've tried and I haven't. It was 2 levels. I never went into Scores, but I know Scores was fairly big and had 2 levels as well. Scores was in our case. The 2 guys that owned Scores ended up testifying in our case as well, because the De Palmas were shaking down Scores and they were trying to get a piece of Atlanta as well. So I became very familiar with Scores. If you know, they had those VIP rooms upstairs at Scores, were the same things in Atlanta. You had the VIP rooms. So that created more square footage. On a busy night, on a weekend night, he would run 100 girls through there as employees, just as dancers. Yeah. So he was making $9 million a year in 1999 money, which made him the most lucrative strip club in America. When he was on tape talking to the Scores owners, he mentioned bringing in over 1 million customers a year through the club. Atlanta has some big convention centers. The weather is nice, basically, compared to the Northeast. So it's an attraction, for people to come into Atlanta and host their once a year convention, their headquarters rally, those type of things. So you'd get a lot of customers that come through the club for sure. It was a 6 nights a week. They opened at 11 a.m. and they closed at 4 a.m. So they were closed 5 hours a day, 6 days a week. We had intel that Kaplan was trying to bribe someone to get that 7th day open so he could work on Sunday as well. Of course, it never happened, but 6 days a week, what is that, 17 hours, 18 hours a day, lunchtime crowd. But the money was made at night. The money was made on the weekends primarily. Thursday, Friday, Saturday were the big nights for sure.
When it comes to the safety of law enforcement, first responders, and military personnel, every moment counts, especially in the dark. Streamlight provides the reliable, high-performance lighting solutions that these heroes trust in the most dangerous situations, whether it's a car stop, navigating dark alleyways, or exploring abandoned buildings. With Streamlight by their side, our heroes can tackle challenges with confidence, knowing they have the power of advanced lighting technology to guide them. From the first responders on the front lines to the law enforcement officers ensuring our safety, Streamlight is there to make every mission a little easier and much safer. Join us in supporting those who protect us. Visit Streamlight.com to discover how you can be part of the team keeping our heroes safe. Because when they shine, we all shine.
Have you ever wished you could go back in time and see the events that shape the true crime cases that fascinate you? With newspapers.com, it's like having a time machine to the past. Dive into more than 1 billion newspaper pages from 1690 to 2025 and relive the headlines that shocked entire towns. Explore newspapers from the US, UK, Canada, Australia, and beyond with a simple search. Read the breaking news as it happened, crime scene reports, witness testimonies, and courtroom drama. Explore forgotten clues and see how the media shaped the narrative of infamous cases. But it's not just the major stories. Newspapers.com lets you dig into local mysteries, missing persons reports, and the small-town scandals that history forgot. It's the closest you can get to being there when it all unfolded. So, if you're ready to dig deeper into the crimes that keep you up at night, start your journey today at newspapers.com. Use the code GOLDSHIELDS for an exclusive 20% discount on your subscription.
So for, our listeners out there who, love these stories, you get a call, they open a strip club. Okay. And why is the FBI? What was the criminality that you guys just went, now we got them. Let's go get them.
Yeah, for sure. I will answer that. Let me say one other thing that has a great New York nexus to it. I would imagine, Tom, you tell me, and Dan, when y'all were with NYPD, you was probably there before Glock, and then you were there after Glock, right? So are you familiar with the story, the rumor, the Atlanta Gold Club story with the Glock pistol and NYPD? Okay. You can find the audio recording of the story I'm going to tell you on the NPR websites in the archives. But Glock is an Atlanta company. It's in Smyrna, Georgia, which is a suburb of Atlanta. It's where the Atlanta Braves Stadium is now, basically. I mean, you could throw a rock and hit the two businesses. And in the early days, Glock was recruiting, trying to get that big contract. And somehow they got the eyes and ears of NYPD. And they would bring these top officials down and entertain them in Atlanta to include the Gold Club. Now, this was under the previous owner before Steve Kaplan bought the club. So we're talking 91, 92, 93 era. That's when Glock or NYPD finally signs the contract to go with Glock. But it's well documented that a lot of that courting went on inside the Gold Club. The SHOT Show that's held out in Vegas every year, the big firearm show called the SHOT Show. The year that Glock got NYPD on board, coincidentally, the girl that was the face of the SHOT Show for Glock was a Gold Club stripper. So there's this a pretty entertaining story between Glock, the Gold Club, NYPD, Vegas, the SHOT Show, the firearm industry. But let me go back and answer your question directly. There was a number of violations that were starting to roll into our attention. Probably the one that was most common and we ended up getting the most traction on at trial was the credit card fraud. And a lot of times in the strip club business, I worked other strip clubs for 10 years. I kind of became the strip club guy in Atlanta because that's how long I was on that squad working those cases. And of course, it goes hand in hand that girls and rogue employees are going to manipulate credit cards and get more money out of a drunk customer, that type of thing. That's standard, right? We all know that. But what we found at the Gold Club was this wasn't a rogue girl or a rogue employee. This was coming from the top, from the owner, from the managers, from the general manager, all the way to the top, where they were endorsing, let's work these credit cards. Let's pump them for as much as we can, both legally and illegally. Now, of course, there were certain times like at employee conferences where they would say, hey, let's not do that. But when they had their small select crew of girls that were really good at it, they whispered in their ear, yes, let's do that. And what I mean by that is a guy rolls in representing his company. He's got the corporate credit card. He entertains a bunch of customers. He thinks maybe he spent $5,000 that night. He goes home, goes to his hotel, wakes up the next morning, and American Express calls him and says, just wanted you to know, in case there was fraud, that your credit card got hit for $28,000 last night. And he's like, that's impossible. I bought a couple bottles of champagne, maybe this or that. We didn't get $28,000 worth of lap dances. I can tell you that right now. And so what the club was doing is they were adding zeros, perhaps at the end. They were putting charges on the bill that, such as an extra hour on a gold room and 3 extra bottles of Magnum champagne at $1,000 a piece, plus the time for not 2 girls, but 6 girls. And all of this would add up. The customer's a little drunk. He doesn't take the time to pull the receipt out and examine it line by line. He signs, he goes home, finds out it's $28,000 later. But his common sense from being in that position before with other strip clubs and other cities in America, he knows how much he spent. And so he immediately starts working American Express and says, no, this didn't happen. I want to refute these charges and what the term in the business was a chargeback. And so first the club would ask the customer to get directly the credit card company would ask the customer to contact the club and see if they could work this out in some way. And so that would happen, and the club would give them the runaround and say, sure, let us do an internal investigation. Let us figure out which rogue employee did this, and we'll take care of it, doggone it, and this will not happen again. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. And of course, nothing would happen. And then as time went on, they corrupted an employee at American Express. So when that customer would call back to American Express and say, all right, look, I did what you asked. I contacted the club. It's been 60 days. I've got no satisfaction out of this. Now I'm calling you, and I want to, as a platinum elite member of American Express for 20 years, I want to issue a chargeback, and I want to dispute this charge. And this employee was responsible for the southeastern United States, and he would find ways to stonewall this. And so at the end of the day, the club got the money more times than not. Sometimes they would get a fraction of it, but it was a large fraction. So what's that customer do next? He's tried the club, no joy. He's tried the credit card company, no joy. I'm calling the FBI. I'm calling somebody in law enforcement and see if they can figure out. Besides, everybody knows that this owner is a mobster. It's the worst kept secret in town. Mikey Scars is running around in his club. Everybody's whispering in my ear that this guy's connected. So maybe the FBI is interested in this. So we started getting these phone calls, and these weren't $500 overcharges. These were $5,000, $10,000, and $15,000 overcharges. So that was really the first thing that we started to see roll in from the criminal perspective. So then you start looking at the club, you start developing informants on the inside, and then we find out that there's other crimes going on. Of course, prostitution is going to be there, but there's not a lot of money to be made for the club in prostitution, especially when you're running $28,000 fraudulent credit card tabs. When you own 5 businesses in Penn Station, you really don't need prostitution money, right? If you're going to commit a crime, let's do it big time. So what we found on the prostitution was the club was turning a blind eye to prostitution for the big time spenders and for the professional athletes, so they could draw in these big time spenders because they know they would go there and get laid. If you and I went to the club, we probably couldn't have prostitution charges get a blind eye from management because we're not big time spenders. And we're not Patrick Ewing. But if those guys roll into the club, then the club turns a blind eye. So the prostitution is happening, and the girl's either getting reimbursed by the club or the athlete is paying her, or the high profile rich customer is paying her. So we did see a significant amount of prostitution because the club was packed with rich CEOs and celebrity athletes. And eventually when we went to trial, the case got hijacked by the media. I make this reference in my book that this was a mob case from the very beginning. We're going after the money flow from Atlanta to New York. We had found that they were putting it in suitcases. Remember, this is before 9/11, putting it on Delta Airlines in a suitcase and shipping it in the regular suitcase luggage freight to New York. Someone would pick it up off of their carousel, and there'd be $25,000, $30,000 in there in cash that was going to the wise guys. And the reason he was able to do that with Delta Airlines is the same way that he was able to do it with American Express. He corrupted 2 Delta Airline employees who would allow these suitcases full of money to go to New York, plus other perks to be able to travel to New York also. So that was what we were all about. Let's get the money. Let's hurt the mob where we can hurt the mob. Let's stop the flow of money. We came to the conclusion after talking to New York and talking to people in the know that this guy was the number one earner as an individual for the Gambinos. Obviously, the unions are making more money. The construction trade is making more money. But as an individual owning private businesses and kicking up, this guy was the number one earner. If you look at the crews he was in, and then you would think, wow, he's significant. And then you look at what the sources are telling the money is going up, then you put 2 and 2 together. Yeah, he probably is the number one earner.
He's a big name. Steve Kaplan is somebody that's been around and mentioned it with regards to many cases I know people who've worked on or I've read about myself. But so when you talk about organized crime, you're talking about a potpourri of different type of criminal activities. These guys are opportunists, but a club like that where money can flow freely, credit card fraud is just one thing. But these types of cases don't get made typically without one or both of 2 things. One is a good source, if not more than one. Usually flipping somebody, and the second is wiretaps and other sorts of electronic eavesdropping. So can you tell us anything about how any of that rolled out in this case?
Yeah, you mentioned the wiretaps, and we did not go that route for a couple reasons. And at trial, the defense actually tried to make an issue out of that maybe this was a half-ass investigation because, after all, everybody does wiretaps, right? But we decided not to go up on a wire for a couple reasons. One, our AUSA did not think that we had enough probable cause because we hadn't tried all the other available routes. Right. Technically, as you know, you have to show the judge we tried everything because there's nothing more invasive than a wiretap. Well, we couldn't carry that burden because, frankly, we had informants all over that club. So, we had informants. We knew what was going on. So it would have been hard for a judge to say that that you can't get information other ways. I was running guys and gals. By the time we did the search warrant and went public, I had about a dozen informants. The other guys on my squad were running 8 to 10 informants. So we knew what was going on 7 days a week inside that club. And most of these guys and gals were prepared to testify because they were either working off of beef, as you know, or they had been burned by the club and they were angry. They had their own motivations. But we were not able to do wiretaps, so we had informants. And then when we went to trial, our case was primarily putting witnesses and informants on the stand. The informants were dynamite. And then you also mentioned, Dan, that we had guys on the inside. When we went to trial, right before we indicted the case, we had a major co-defendant cooperate. And it's a good story. We got a phone call from Ed McDonald. Does that name ring a bell to you?
Eastern District. Oh, yeah.
And Ed, of course, played his own character in Goodfellas. He's the guy that tells Ray Liotta's wife, hey, suck it up, sunshine. This is your future. Yeah. So when she started complaining about going into WITSEC, he wasn't very sympathetic. So Ed played himself. I didn't know who Ed was, but as we did the search warrant on the club and the 2 New Yorkers and our AUSA was from New York as well. And so one day we have a meeting and they say, hey, good news. Ed McDonald just called and he's representing Ziggy, and Ziggy wants to come in. And I was like, well, that's great about Ziggy, but who's Ed McDonald? And then they had to, they had to inform me who Ed McDonald was. But Ziggy was our big cooperator. He was number 2, number 3 in the organization. He had been in another crew before he joined Steve Kaplan's. Right as I talk to you right now, it was DB Nardo, someone that Sammy Gravano whacked. Ziggy had been in his crew running a kiosk, I think it was, somewhere in Manhattan. And then he switched over to the crew that had the Gold Club. So he's very experienced with the wise guys. He knew how they worked. He was also very experienced in amateur basketball. And a little weird thing that happened in this case is our number 2 guy, Steve Kaplan, our number 1 bad guy, and then his right-hand man, Ziggy, were huge basketball fans. They were New Yorkers. They loved the Knicks. So every time the Knicks were in town, the Knicks were in the Gold Club. We ended up putting a couple of them on the witness stand. And Ziggy used those basketball connections to get these athletes into the club, which then led to the football players, which led to the baseball players. And the MO on this was not to get these guys in the club so that I can be a fangirl or I can maybe get $1,000 out of them. The MO was to get them in the club so that the average Joes would say, I'm going to the Gold Club because that's where Dennis Rodman is. That's where Patrick Ewing is. That's where Terrell Davis is. That's where Charles Oakley is. Hell, that's where Madonna is. I'm going to the Gold Club so I can say that I hung out with these folks. And he used them to bring in everybody else. Those athletes that I just mentioned would go and spend the night and maybe not spend $1 out of their own pocket. But they were going to bring in so many other people as, hanging on to the coattails that it was well worth it. So
great, Mark.
So to answer your question, Dan, we did have a big turncoat at the end. We did not go up on a wire, but we had a ton of informants.
That's amazing. And what a marketing strategy, right?
Very successful. He did a lot. He did a lot of things that were very unique. He met once with the Scores owners. The Scores owners were cooperating at this time, and so their office was wired up. And on one of these meetings, when he's at Scores, he tells these guys, "Look, here's what you're doing wrong. You need to go down to the bar and get rid of all the tables and the chairs. You don't need people sitting down. You don't need couches. Pack these guys in like sardines. Get them in there. This is not a gentleman's club. You want this to be a moneymaker for you. The hell with the gentleman's club concept. If they want to lay on a couch, they can go home and lay on a couch. Pack them in there as much as they can. Spin, 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 spin." And that was the way it was at the Gold Club. Now, if you went up in the VIP rooms, you had your couches and your chairs and your seats. But if you were on the main floor, you were packed in. And that's where he was making probably 70% of his money was just the common Joes packing them in.
What about drugs? What kind of drugs scene was in the...
Well, we charged drugs in the indictment, but it wasn't your traditional drug charges. We did not claim that the club was trafficking. What the club was doing was allowing drug use. They were allowing the girls to use drugs. They were allowing certain customers to use drugs in the VIP rooms, to the point where we had girls that overdosed in the locker rooms or in other places inside the clubs. And Steve Kaplan would not allow management to call 911 or to call law enforcement or to call paramedics because he didn't want to bring heat on the club because he knew these girls were getting high. But if he brought heat in, it might bring an investigation and so on and so on. So he charged the other employees, the house moms and the managers, figure out a way to get this girl out of here, make sure she lives, she's okay, but do not bring the police or paramedics into this club. But we charged that, and it was very effective at trial because it was such a turnoff to the jury that he was allowing these girls to overdose and do nothing about it.
Right. Absolutely. We've all run, big cases, thankfully. with some successful ones. And the one thing I wanted to ask you, because of the temptation that you had with the New York connection and Gotti and all that, when is it tempting not to take the case down when you have to just get that next nugget, keep it going a little bit more? Who else can we get? That's always a big decision with big cases and long cases of when to do it. So how did that decision come about? Like, you were ready, you had them all. We're not going to get who we really want, but we got everyone we're looking at.
Yeah, good question. I experienced that in my biker case, because in the biker case, we had threat to society. If we leave these guys out getting in gunfights and dealing drugs, it's a danger to the community. You don't necessarily have that with a strip club as far as an overt danger to the community, the more I keep it open. But what we did find is they were now owned to us. They knew my name. They knew my partner's name, John Simmons. We actually got a letter from one of the defense attorneys saying, hey, we understand you've been asking around. So the cat was kind of out of the bag a little bit. We had developed as much information as we thought we could get from the informants. What we needed now is the records. We needed the hard ledgers, the computers. At this time, computers are being used, but not nearly in the way that they are now, of course. But we brought IRS into the case so that we could do a search warrant, and we did 3 search warrants. We searched the club, we searched his house in Atlanta, and we searched his corporate warehouse in Woodside, Queens, because we wanted those corporate records, and that's where he was keeping them, because we wanted to see what he was doing with taxes, see how much money he was claiming. So the answer to your question is, there came a time where we thought we need to balance. He knows about us. Is he going to start changing his tactics? Is he going to maybe even destroy these records? We're not really going to get any more out of the girls and guys that we don't already have. We think we can make a case on everybody in management that's a significant player. We think the time's ready to go. So when we went, we were pretty satisfied that it was the right time to go. And we did that in April of 99.
And how many arrests did you make? And is anybody...
When we did this, it was just a search in April of 99. We did a search warrant only. Then we spent 6 months looking at the records. Then we went to the grand jury, and we ran a grand jury investigation. We started running all of these witnesses through the grand jury and locking down their testimony. There was a lot of guys and girls that were reluctant to testify because either they were scared or, quite frankly, they were loyal and they weren't willing to give it up. And we gave them immunity, so we took away their ability to stonewall the grand jury. And we ran a grand jury investigation and put over 200 witnesses in the grand jury for 6 months. And we indicted in 99, and we arrested 17 defendants in November of 99. That included Steve Kaplan, his senior managers, 2 police officers, 2 Delta Airline employees. And we never intended to indict or arrest any of the girls. We didn't think it looked good at trial. It didn't look good to us. We really kind of looked at the girls as, even though they were making fabulous money and they were very loyal to him, we looked at them as victims in this thing. But we had 2 girls that were super loyal to him, that were egregious in the credit card fraud, and we ended up charging them too. So of that 17, two were girls. And then the last of the 17 was Mikey Scars, which at that time was Steve Kaplan's capo. And of course, you probably know Mikey Scars from his participation in what's going on in New York now. He's doing a podcast, and he went into WITSEC and all of those things that he's doing now. And I think he's probably quite the celebrity there in New York now.
Incredible. I mean, those are, when you get on the job, whether it's the NYPD or the FBI, and you get into doing investigations, these are the ones that you like, oh God, I hope I get one like this, that you're able to sink your teeth into and just make it that case. You always want that right. Case.
Let me tell you what happened also that helped me and set me up for success. I'm brand new right out of the academy. And Steve Kaplan ends up paying the legal bill for all 17 defendants, and he gets the number one attorneys in the city of Atlanta. To my point, his attorney is now Donald Trump's attorney on Donald Trump's case for election interference in Atlanta. You remember that case where he was charged down there? Well, that same attorney now, 20 years later, represented Steve Kaplan 20 years ago. So heavy hitters, right? You remember when Ray Lewis was charged with murder after the Super Bowl? Okay. His attorney represented our CEO from the Gold Club. So you have the who's who of Atlanta defense attorneys. Just like John Gotti's case, you had the who's who. We even had the guy, his name escapes me right now. He was an attorney from New York that represented Puff Daddy, of all people. When Puff Daddy got charged with the shooting inside the nightclub in the late 90s, when Jennifer Lopez was with him during that shooting, it's not Larry Bronson. Larry Bronson was he was the true mob attorney that we ended up charging in this case as well. But I can't think of his name right now, but he came up and was involved in the case, but he didn't last long. And I talk about in the book that I think he got turned off by the freak show that the media had turned this into, and he withdrew from the case. But where I was going with this, man, was this. We had every suppression hearing you can imagine. We had every type of hearing to keep us from putting these witnesses on the stand. We had a couple people that had testified and been given immunity, but they lied. So therefore their immunity was no good. But we had to have hearings to prove to the judge that they lied. It's those type of hearings. So here I am, a brand new attorney, and I'm brand new agent, and I'm experiencing all of these hearings and trial strategies, and I'm being called to testify. I'm at the center of a lot of these controversies. And I learned so much that when I moved on in my career to do other cases, I knew all of the defense strategies and what to stay away from and where the landmines were, because I learned it in this case that had 17 defense attorneys.
Looking for powerful defense without the mess? Meet Impact, a revolutionary line of chemical irritants designed for law enforcement, military, and personal protection. With no blowback, no cross-contamination, and easy cleanup, Carry Impact delivers unmatched stopping power without the hassle. Whether you're in the field or on the street, safety should never be compromised. Protect yourself with the next generation of defense. Carry Impact. Stopping power redefined.
Patriot is a premium whiskey hard seltzer. We've carefully crafted 4 flavors that not only taste exceptional, but can be enjoyed on any occasion, anytime. We're committed to giving back 5% of all profits to the core groups we call the backbone of America. We are proud to help those who serve our great country. This is America's Seltzer, the brand that stands for quality, community, and the American spirit.
So nobody flipped, is what you're telling me.
We had Ziggy flip. Ziggy.
Okay.
Okay. The guy that
after the big takedown, nobody cooperated.
No, we had 2 of the indicted charge. We had a former New York Jet practice team player who was a bodyguard on the front door. We had charged him because he was the only Black employee of the club that was charged because he was responsible for being the personal bodyguard of the celebrity Black athletes that came into the club. If they wanted a girl, he would go and get the girl, and he took care of everything for these employees. So we charged him. He flipped, and one of the girls that I told you about, those 2 girls, one of them flipped as well, and they ended up both testifying at trial, and they were fantastic. And Ziggy, he testified at trial. Ziggy was on the witness stand for a week, 5 days. Yeah.
Brutal.
Three of that was direct, and 2 of that was cross-examination. That was brutal. He took a beating because he had his own baggage, but at the end of the day, he did well.
Well, that's what happens in these cases. You're not dealing with people who are upstanding people. When you're arresting people and they flip, you got a career criminal in front of you, and they're going to have baggage, but it all comes down to credibility and you being able to corroborate what they say. And if you can do that and they can appear to be telling the truth to the jury, and they can put up with the barrage of questioning and insinuations and everything else that's going to be insults be thrown at them by the defense to try to get them to crack, then you can stand pretty well at the end of these cases.
You're absolutely right. What we had as our advantage is we didn't just have Ziggy telling this story. Then we put the manager on, the other manager, and he told the same story. And then we put the girl up, and she told the same story. And then we put 5 other dancers up who had no axe to grind, and they told the same story, and so on and so on and so on. Yeah, the redundancy of all telling the same story drove the point home really well. That's how we got over the hurdle of the personal baggage.
Fantastic, man. That's like, you want a textbook case, man. That's how you do it.
This is a movie, The Gold Club.
Right. And you think about how simple it was. It was a phone call. Yo, someone's opening a strip club. Okay, cool. What's what do I? All right, great. But to take it to that level is incredible. And before I get to the next thing, just want to take a real quick breather and break just to once again thank our sponsors, Galls.com, tacticalgear.com, Streamlight, Carry Impact, Patriot Seltzer, newspapers.com, and they're all part of our family here, and we can't thank them enough for what they do for us and for our listeners.
Great companies, great products and services. We ask you to patronize them because they are out there doing the right thing for the men and women of law enforcement and the military, and they're just dynamite people. Tom and I do not associate ourselves. We don't partner up with any company we don't believe in. It's not just the product they make, their ethos, who they are, what they stand for means a lot to us. And this is what we have found, that these companies are amazing. So Galls, Tactical Gear, Streamlight, newspapers.com, Patriot Hard Seltzer. If you're looking for any of those products, use these people. They're great people.
Yeah, they are. And we've said no, and that's why, and these are the ones we say yes to because of what they represent. And that's important. Mark, there's another, part of your career I want to touch on, which I think is fascinating, is the Stolen Valor cases that you did. I think is such a fascinating case investigations that you do. Take us through what it is, how you started it, and the cases that you had to run with that.
I stumbled into it by dumb luck. We didn't have anybody in Atlanta that was assigned to work those type of cases. That violation at the time, before it was known as Stolen Valor, it was just military impersonation. So, who worked impersonation cases? Nobody in particular, other than maybe the agent that developed the lead. You just went to your boss and said, "Hey, let me work it," and they gave you the green light. How I got involved in it the first time, and how I kind of built my reputation there in the office as the guy to go to if you have these type of problems, was right after 9/11. I was assigned to an Air Force base there in Atlanta, very near where Glock handgun and the Atlanta Braves are located. It's in Marietta. It's called Dobbins Air Force Base. And long story short, what we discovered that before 9/11, you think back to how we ran security in airports and other high value targets, and we kind of shake our head, right? Well, same way on military bases. If you were in uniform, if you pulled up in your car at the gate in what looked like a military uniform, the guard would wave you through. That's all it took. You just had to pass the smell test and the visual test. Looks like in this case, it looks like a Marine Corps captain. And he waved him through. And this was before 9/11. Nobody cared. And all this guy was doing, we learned later, is two things. But the primary was, he was such a weirdo and a cheapskate. He wanted to go to the commissary and buy things cheap. All right. And when he would get his cigarettes and his alcohol and all these things that are cheap and not taxed on military installations, he'd take it up to the cash register. He's in uniform. They don't ask him for an ID. He buys it and he goes about his merry way. He would have got away with it. His mistake was this. He was horny. And on Sunday, he went to church and he hit in uniform on an enlisted Air Force girl. Okay. This enlisted Air Force girl happened to be an informant for Air Force OSI. She doesn't think anything about it from a criminal perspective other than, wow, the Marine Corps really has some creeps, right? This guy's hitting on me. He knows I'm enlisted and yet he's still hitting on me. But she asked him a couple questions and he didn't have good answers about his unit and things of that nature. And so in the back of her mind, she was like, this is really weird, but okay, no big deal. Then 9/11 happens. And her handler says to her and, all of his informants, hey, you got any hot leads on things we need to be aware of? Anybody suspicious? And she says, well, I don't know if this is worth anything, and then she tells him the story that I just told you, that this guy that is a Marine Corps captain pretending to be is hitting on her at church. And she was such a good informant, she had gotten his phone number. And we take that phone number and we run it. We find out who this guy is. He's a convicted felon. He's not in the military. And, oh, by the way, he's out on bond for a rape charge.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Nice guy.
So
nice guy.
I write a search warrant. We go to his house. We find all the uniforms. He gives it up. He tells us the story that I just told you. I just wanted to get free goods or get goods cheap, tax-free, that kind of stuff. And during the search, great story, I learned it from another agent. It was not my idea. I found a dog food bag in his laundry room and there was no dog. And I asked him about it and he said, well, sometimes I keep my girlfriend's dog, but it didn't settle right with me. And I asked somebody to come in and do what someone did to me once. I said, take your hand, stick it in the bottom of that dog food bag and see if there's anything hidden under all that dog food. And they did it. And guess what? They pulled out a pistol. Well, and that's what happened when I was a new agent. I stuck my hand in a bucket of laundry powder detergent, and inside a baggie was a pistol that had been used in a homicide from an Asian gangbanger. And the girl that had me do it knew it was in there, and she wanted to teach me a lesson that this is where bad guys hide guns. So what we found was, a long story short, that gun, it was not actually a gun. It was a BB pistol pellet. It looked like a gun because he was a felon and he didn't want to get caught with a real gun. But when he raped that girl, he held that pistol to her head and she described it verbatim. And it was that BB pistol that we found in the bottom of that dog food bag. So that's my very first Stolen Valor case. We did not have a Stolen Valor statute. What we had from World War II, it'd been on the books that long, was military impersonation and impersonation of a government employee. And he pleads guilty to the rape charge. And then when he does 5 years, I think, on it, and then when he gets out, he does 1 year on our federal impersonation charge. So that's what now we know as Stolen Valor is. The book comes out about that same time, titled Stolen Valor. That term gets put into our vernacular from law enforcement and the military, and now everything's Stolen Valor. And there was a couple, 3 or 4 more times, and my next book will talk about these, where people came to me and said, hey, there's this guy that's he's a fitness instructor at Gold's Gym, and he's telling everybody he's a Navy SEAL, and I think this guy's full of shit. Can you maybe do something with this? And I would reach out to my contacts. I'd run his name through them. They have these databases of all the SEAL graduates, for example, that have gone through BUDS. And they said, no, this guy he's a fraud. And then I would get in touch with the owner of the company, and I said, hey, you want to do something about this before I get involved, because this is going to be bad publicity. So sometimes, and then they would fire the employee. So sometimes we could, as Barney Fike would say, nip these things in the bud before they became an issue, because there really wasn't a true egregious crime that I could probably get a jury to convict him on. He's basically lying so he can get laid, or he's lying so he can get more customers to be his clients. But later in my career, I had 2 guys that were egregious. One of them was in the Outlaw Motorcycle Club, and he had been for 30 years telling people that he had served in Vietnam. And in fact, I found out, and I proved at trial when he took the stand and testified in his defense about the drug charges. We impeached his testimony by showing that he was a stolen valor fraud, that he never was in Vietnam. And it's the only time, men, that I'd ever seen a witness. The cross-examination was so beautiful that he literally turned his back to the prosecutor and said, crossed his arms, and said, "I'm not talking to you anymore." And this is because the prosecutor had embarrassed him and tongue-tied him and twisted him up so bad. And this was a 30-year member of the outlaw that had 3 homicides under his belt, right? So we cut him off at the knees with the stolen valor, and the jury convicted him on the drug charges. And then lastly, we had a police officer that was claiming a Purple Heart, and he had doctored his DD-214, which is your discharge document that lists your medals. And he'd given himself a Purple Heart on that DD-214. And he never would have got caught, but here's what happened. There was a parade float in Midland, Texas, where you self-submit essays to be put on the parade float during Veterans Day for wounded veterans. So he writes this story about how he got wounded down on a secret jungle mission in South America, and puts himself on this parade float along with some real legitimate badasses. There was a Delta operator, a Green Beret. There's 28 veterans on this parade float. There's 2 parade floats, 14 on one, 14 on the other, to include spouses. And they're being drugged through town on this parade float, waving to everybody. These parade floats are really long. And as they're going through this small town, they come to a red light, and using my hands to show you, they get stacked up one behind the other. And the second parade float gets parked on a train track. You know what's going to happen. 60 miles an hour, a train hits that parade float, kills 4 people. My bad guy is on that parade float with his wife. She loses her leg. Okay. He's a hero. This happened to our guy in Atlanta. This is such a sad story. The city of Atlanta rallies around him and his wife. He's a police officer. He's been awarded a Medal of Valor. This is just a terrible thing. Meanwhile, his in-laws say this is bullshit. This guy we always knew he was a liar. He used to tell all these grandiose war stories, and we just rolled our eyes and we tolerated it because we loved his wife, which is our niece and our sister and all these other things. But now his lies are putting her on a parade float and almost getting her killed. And we want to do something about this. So they pick up the phone, and the phone call makes its way to me, and I work the case, and we take him to trial, and we convict him. And we convict him under stolen valor. We call it a stolen valor. We also convict him under some financial fraud charges, which is where most cases are being charged. We call them stolen valor, but we're not using the stolen valor statute because it's only a misdemeanor. We're actually using financial fraud charges, which are felonies, to hook these guys, to make them felonies. But here's why this guy went to trial, and here's the gut punch. It took 4 years from the time the locals arrested him. We ended up charging this as a state violation because the feds passed on it. But I'm still the case agent, and I'm the local municipality loves me because I'm helping them solve this. We have the resources. I speak military. They don't. We work this as a partnership, but it's a state case. It took 4 years to get it to trial. And in that 4 years, he settles with the train company. Everybody that survived settled with the train company for an undisclosed amount of money, right? You can imagine Union Pacific's got a ton of money. People die, people lose legs, people get bones broken. A lot of money is going to be paid out in settlement. Well, so how much does his wife get for losing her leg, and how much does he get for emotional trauma? We speculate, based on talking to attorneys that know these things, that she gets $5 million for her leg. He gets $1 million for his trauma. The reason he doesn't go to trial is because if he admits that he was on that parade float by fraud, he has to give the money back. But if he keeps his mouth shut and goes to trial and gets convicted, he doesn't have to give the money back.
Wow.
What a tangled web we weave, huh?
So why not take my chance at trial? I get convicted. This judge doesn't like the case anyway. That's why it took 4 years to get it to trial. He's probably going to give me a sweetheart of a deal. So what? Okay, I'm a felon. I get probation. I can't be a police officer again, but I'm $6 million richer. He takes the gamble. He loses at trial. The jury's out a couple hours. They deliberate. They convict him, but he keeps the money. How about that?
A little backwards. You think?
So, you know, the whole Stolen Valor thing, one of the most interesting things about that to me is we have members of our representative branches of government who are elected leaders who have stolen valor. And isn't that fascinating? It just.
Yeah, that's a big thing right now with Corey Mills down in Florida, as you probably know. And, you know, it happened with John Kerry when he was running for president. There was allegations made against him. You know, there was a new. Yeah, I mean, you could go on and on. The list is out there. You know, even the Green Beret that's the UFC fighter that's. I'm just at a loss for his name, but I mean, that's happening in the last 30 days. The last 30 to 60 days. And he's been on Joe Rogan. I mean, he's a celebrity. Tim Kennedy.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Tim Kennedy, the UFC fighter, or a Green Beret, the whole 9 yards. He just came out recently and said, okay, I shouldn't have had a V on my Bronze Star. You're right. I wasn't truthful, because he got called out by other veterans about it. So yes, this is something, you know, with all of these veterans coming back from Afghanistan. And see, I served with the Bureau in Afghanistan on 2 tours. So I was around a lot of the JSOC units, and I know how they work, and I got this education. So in addition to being a Marine veteran, I got a really good education on Afghanistan, and it just made me smarter on these things. And there's so many veterans that can now see through the BS and know within, just like you, if you talk to a guy who claimed he was a police officer, NYPD, and he did this, this, and this, you could tell within 2 minutes if he's lying.
1 minute.
Or not. 1 minute. Okay. 1 minute. Yeah. It's the exact same thing.
Yep.
And, you know, how these guys think they can get away with it, I don't know. But yes, it's an ongoing issue.
Yeah. The videos that you see on social media are wild when, you know, they're all, I mean, and I was in the military, Dan was in the military, but you watch the videos and sometimes their uniforms, you're like, bro, what are you doing? Like, what are you putting on your uniform?
Look like an 8-year-old dressing up.
Those guys are clowns, for the lack of a better term. And quite frankly, they may have some type of emotional mental problems, because it's so egregious that it's comical. But then there's guys like my guy who doctors his forms very cleverly. And there's guys like Tim Kennedy. There's guys that do it very smartly. And that's where it takes a thorough investigation to be able to say, yeah, this guy is not telling the truth. He's a fraud on this particular issue.
The mayor of Baltimore is going through this now, isn't it? Wes.
I haven't heard that. And Tim Walz, the governor of Minnesota, he got called out on that. Yeah.
The weapon he carried in war.
There you go.
The mayor, he said, he got a Purple Heart and never got it. And then got it like years later or some weird stuff like that. But there's always another alternative to it, you know, and it's the fraud part. And it just, you kind of spitting in the face of the men and women who actually earned it, you know, and got it. And that's what gets me, you know. It's like there's real heroes out there, and all you're doing is just kind of trampling on them.
My guy in this case I told you about that we went to trial on, this is how egregious he was. We had a relative that said that he flew down to Texas to go to Galveston, which is the big beach in Texas, to visit her because she had a beach house. And when she picked him up from the airport, he was walking with a cane and he had a wounded veteran's hat on. He walks out to the curb. He throws the cane in the trunk, puts the hat in the trunk. He swims, he jumps, he frolics for the next week. When it's time to take him back to the airport, he does everything in reverse. puts the hat back on. He pulls the cane out. And finally, this relative says to his wife, who lost her leg later, "Hey, what's up with your husband? What's going on here?" And she just rolls her eyes and she smirks. He said, "That's just Shane being Shane." So she was complicit in this, just letting him get away with this stuff. And it almost cost her life. That's how egregious he was.
So you are an absolute font of stories of fascinating stuff. And this is,
I'll take it as a compliment. Yeah. Lots of great cases. No, I mean it. Lots of great cases. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was fortunate. I really was.
Great storyteller too. So I've really enjoyed hearing your stories. Now, I'd like you to give the audience an opportunity to learn a little bit more about how they can learn more about you, how they can find out about your book and any other appearances you're making. So please, by all means, tell us, how do we learn more about Mark Sewell?
Well, thanks for the opportunity. Yeah, my book is like every other book is out there on Amazon. It was published by Roman and Littlefield. The title of the book is Investigating America's Most Notorious Strip Club. The FBI, the Mafia, and the Gold Club. And then my website is I68 Books, as in Isaiah, chapter 6, verse 8 books, I68books.com. And that can get you to some other information about me as well. And then, like yourself, I'm always out there on the podcast circuit. So if you like to listen to podcasts, more stories, I've done some podcasts about exclusively the motorcycle, exclusively the Stolen Valor, exclusively other wise guy cases. So there's some selections out there to choose from.
Outstanding.
We'd love to have you back. We'd love to have you back right now. I mean,
anytime.
It was, you know what? We started the show off with, this is why we do this show. This is why we have this podcast, to get these stories out there that people might not know about, and they're fascinating. And it just shows the dedication and willingness to just do what's necessary to do in our careers to get bad guys. And Mark, you're such a great example of that, of having just military career, rolling that over to, the FBI, and what you did there is a testament to you and your hard work and what we do every day. And as Dan said, it was a pleasure. We could sit here for hours doing this, but thank you so very much for joining us today.
Well, likewise, you have great guests, and I enjoyed listening to you. And hopefully I'm just one of many.
We appreciate it, and we will be in touch because we'd love to have you back. So get that book, Investigating America's Most Notorious Strip Club, and then I68books.com. Learn more about Mark Sewell and about his amazing career, and we've just really enjoyed this. So, Tom, take us out of this great show.
Well, this is the time that we all say a prayer for our law enforcement officers. They do a thankless job. They do it with very little money, and they do it because it's in their heart and it's in their soul, and it's something they need to do to help people and protect people. And more people need to acknowledge that, and their families too, because their families go through it just as much as they do. Pray for them. Pray for our military officers and military vets out there that are doing jobs all over the world. See them in the store, pat them on the back, say thank you, give them a wave on the street. You have no idea what that does to them. It makes their day. It makes them smile. So please do. That's the least we can do for them. And as always, just check us out on TheGoldShieldShow.com, YouTube.com/@GoldShields, and every audio channel you can think of. And do not forget about our merchandise. Go to JUSSASKJAN.com. Yep. And get our new merchandise that's out there. And we'll talk about that more later. For my partner, Dan Murphy, and for an incredible guest, Mark Sewell, this is Tom Smith for Gold Shields. No one go anywhere. We got overtime coming up, and we'll see everybody soon. Everyone stay safe.
As promised, we are back with the OT, the overtime top. Tom. What?
Dan.
Tom, overtime top. Hey, Top, this is Dap. What do cops love more than overtime?
No,
I know a lot of things.
Good stories.
Stories.
And we've done, dude, this is our 138th, I think, and it doesn't get old.
No,
You just
not at all.
hear these stories of, and me and you just brought up a great point at the end of it, that we've run federal investigations, we've been involved in all that, but when you're doing it, it's different than hearing a story about someone's. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And a case like this, so many people, especially in New York, oh, look at that club, it's mobbed up. I heard it's mobbed up.
Yeah.
What does that mean?
Right.
What does that really mean? Oh, mobsters go there, but what does it mean that it's mobbed up? He gave us an insider view of what goes on in these places, how the money moves around, how people are ripped off. Somebody's always going to get ripped off by organized crime. That's the way it works.
No
They
doubt.
prey on people. And in this case, it's fascinating to hear from the guy who did the case.
Yeah, it's wild. And the money that's generated, I mean, in the millions, and the connections. You listen to Mark talk about, the New York, and then Atlanta, and then the celebrities, and then the athletes. And then it's this web that, that just everyone gets pulled into. And he's so well spoken. I mean, what a storyteller.
He's fantastic.
God.
He's fantastic. Yep. And so we got the Gambino crime family, Steve Kaplan, who's associated or part of, with them. John Gotti Jr., at this point, when he's involved in the case, John Sr. is already in prison. And John Jr. is running things, so to speak. And John Jr., not to be insulting, but wasn't the brightest light chandelier in many ways.
No.
He got involved in nightclub fights. He was young, and he probably shouldn't have been what he was. But in any event, him and his crew go down there, and they open a strip club, and they're making all kinds of money. He said that $1.9 million a year was grossed by the club. 1 million customers a year. So when you look at those numbers, the first thing that jumps out to me is how much was not reported to the government, because a lot more than $9 per person walked into that club.
Right.
So there's all kinds of money laundering, all kinds of tax evasion stuff going on there. Every scam you can imagine goes on in a place like this.
Yeah,
and
money people still
in.
just go there, and it's one of those things. But just it's one of those careers you love hearing about, and part of us starting this show and doing this show is getting these stories out there.
Yep.
To as many people as we can, and Mark is the epitome of hard work and determination, and when you're a Marine captain, it's kind of you got one set, one shift, and that's forward and 100%.
Exactly. No, and he lives up to that, and you can tell he's a man of integrity. He's a man of honor who did the work right for as long as he did it, and still wants to contribute and share. There's a lot to be learned from the sorts of things that he worked on, and I tell you, the stolen. We didn't even get to the biker stuff that he did.
No,
but the stolen valor cases are fascinating.
Yeah, and infuriating.
Yeah. It's not just that they stand there and they say, I earned this medal that they didn't earn. It's that they use it for financial gain.
Right.
Is that they use it for advantage and they use it for benefit. And that's the sickening part. And so that's really God's work, in my opinion, right? Going after people who are saying you got to go after them.
And then, when I was in the task force and I would travel with guys I was working with who were veterans who then became, FBI agents or whatever. And we were traveling somewhere and all right, pre-board all the vets and all that. And they go, no, I'm fine. I don't need to go on first. And then you got these morons pretending, to be hurt and all this to get on a plane first, where the plane doesn't leave until everyone's on.
Right. And you have a seat. It's not musical chairs. Unless you're in Southwest Airlines, and then you have to fight for the chair. But for the most part, you've got a seat. It's not going anywhere without you. What is your rush to get in the galleyway and stand there in that long hallway that's usually not heated or air conditioned when it needs to be, right?
I mean, we're going off on a tangent, but it is funny. Or you land and you get to the gate and everyone stands up. Like, where are you going? And you stand there with your butt in someone's face, for 20 minutes before they open the door. And people just do it every single flight.
Yeah.
And I just sit there and laugh. at them because it's the same crap. But we just went on a total different.
Yeah, a little. We
different
diverged a
stream.
little bit.
Sorry, everybody.
But that's okay. You know, we just had some great stories, and I tell you what, I can't wait to read his book. And just a reminder again, Mark Sewell's first book that just came out, his second one's coming, is Investigating America's Most Notorious Strip Club, about the Gold Club in Atlanta. And there are videos and YouTube stuff you can look up on him and his website, I68, like Isaiah 6, verse 8, books.com. And he's just a fascinating guy, and we'll look to have him on again on a future date. And maybe we'll delve into the biker stuff that time.
Yeah.
That'd be fascinating.
Yeah. It was great. It was just so much fun and so relaxing to talk to someone like that. We just had a great time. Really, really good time.
Enjoyed it tremendously. I want to give a quick shout out and thank you to our OT sponsor, Fairline Services. FairlineServices.com if you're looking for security services, guard, plain clothes, executive protection, threat assessments, all sorts of stuff. They're based in the upper Midwest. They have tentacles everywhere, and they're high quality company. FairlineServices.com.
Yep. Big company getting us going on the OT. And one more time, just ask Jan, JUSASKJAN.com/goldshields brings you right to our merchandise. And it came out so freaking good. It's amazing.
Did you get your first shirt yet?
Yes, I did. Yes, I did. A little gift from Jan.
Beautiful. Can't wait to rock it.
Yep. The Christmas list is going to be very long.
Yes. Yeah. If you love the show, tell everybody, show everybody, wear the merch. You know, help keep things going.
Yeah. And we posted a lot, so just hit the link on all the posts about it.
Yep. Just ask Jan, JUSASK, Jan.com, and get your merch.
Yep.
Another great show, buddy. We're privileged. We're very privileged.
Just a great time, and more to come, everybody. Keep joining us. Keep subscribing, the bell, following us, all that good stuff. It motivates us, keeps us going, and it's great to have people like you out there supporting the show and listening to our guests and us. So thank you.
Yep.
Once again. Dan, have a great night.
You too.
And everyone out there, stay safe. Take care of yourself, and we'll see everybody soon.